Welcome everyone to the February Build Capable Exclusive. My name is Sarah Mercier, and I am joined here today by Karine Pagano and Sean Putman and Rob Christie. And hopefully we'll have a special guest here in just a little bit. We are going to be talking about AI today, but more importantly, we're going to be talking about data today. And everyone on today's exclusive has a little something to say about data and why it's important. And I think it's going to be a really interesting discussion today to talk about why is data so important and what in the heck does it have to do with AI? So, what I thought we might do today is have maybe a little panel discussion. And then here towards the end, I'll share some resources and some cool things that we're doing with XCL that will help you with AI automations and workflows. But I did want to set some expectations. First of all, this is not going to be an AI tool demo. So if you're hoping to see like how N8N is going to integrate with things or something, that's not what today is going to be about. Today is about the practical infrastructure that we have in L&D functions within an organization and how that might fit into the rest of the organization's technology stack and what that means today in 2026 in the age of AI. What does that look like? How is that shifting? And what role does data play? We're going to focus on real world system reliability. Okay. And what does that look like and why is data part of that? So I thought what we might do is just kick off a framing question for today. So here's our first question, my friends. What is one example of AI automation that you've seen fail? And why do you think it failed? Who wants to get us started?
I have been watching all the companies thinking about how to, I'm starting on a negative tone, but we'll get to the positive piece in a minute. Thinking they can replace full jobs with AI. And several companies have very publicly announced that they were laying off large teams or departments of, let's say, customer service and replacing them with AI. And then very quickly and quietly hiring those folks back. They realized that was not actually as effective or didn't work. And so I would say that's been a very public declaration and a very quiet failure admission that companies that have done that have really reversed course and realized that AI can't replace full job functions today. Why? So the why, I'll pick on customer service folks for a second. Unless you have an extensive knowledge base that has all the answers to every question that someone might ask, and that data is clean and available to be searched and surfaced with appropriate context, it's almost impossible for AI to take a customer service call and surface up the exact right response for a question. And so that's even for basic questions. If you have basic knowledge base things, let alone complex user challenges, et cetera. And when do you escalate and when do you get a human involved? So I think there was a vast overestimation of what AI could do in terms of handling customer service, but also organizations didn't have a data infrastructure that could support answering even some basic questions. So it was a twofold, I would say, fail.
I think it's interesting that you use that example because I come from a call center background. So that's how I got into the training field. And when I was working in call centers, every time that we would do a new call center startup where we came in and we trained all of the call center reps and did conversions and things like that, I worked in technology and systems. We would go in and there were very few documented processes. And they would say, oh, go talk to so-and-so. They know the process for this. Or go talk to so-and-so. They know how to do this. And I spent time and time again, so much time just documenting what is it that people need to do? What does good look like? And depending on who you talk to, it would be different. And then you would document it and then something would change and nobody would update it. And so there was so much that was embedded into human knowledge, right? And we actually have an activity for this in an e-learning instructional design course I'm teaching where the case study is you've got a whole lot of people that are about to retire. None of their job descriptions are updated and none of their job processes are documented. What do you do? And so it's such a common problem. What do you say, Sean, Rob? What other automations or what else would you add?
I think the main thing I see is it's just going to fix all the issues. To use your favorite term, automagically, it's just going to take everything that was wrong and you're going to put it into AI and it's just going to fix it.
Yeah, like the AI robots are so much smarter than us humans that, you know what? I know you've been dealing with this problem for a long time. Just let the AI answer it for you.
Exactly.
It'll come up with an answer really fast, too. It'll say, sure, I can solve all your problems. Here's the answer. Is it going to be right or even good? It's the word salad. What do you think, Rob?
Yeah, so my perspective is a little bit different, maybe less L&D related, but more sort of developer related is the explosion of AI assists with developing and coding. Numerous tools out there, all of them very good. However, I think there's a management level of a company that takes that too far, that thinks, oh, I can delete all of my staff. I can have 3 or 4 good guys who know what they're doing when it comes to using the AI tools. And that is not the right answer. The AI tools still have a hard time with very complex things. When they make mistakes, they are pretty serious and they're cascading. And you oftentimes have to restart versus continue to prompt to get something better. So yeah, it's again that idea of, hey, AI is going to solve all these problems. It's the answer. It's magic. Someone sees the magic trick once and they assume it's going to be that answer all the time. And it's not. It's case by case. There's different things. There's different ways to talk to it. It's a skill to work with the machine that I think a lot of people just don't have yet.
Yeah, I agree. And I think when we talk about these AI automations, and this Kareen mentioned, is that you've got to be working with good data, good source data, right? And so if you don't have a data governance model, if your content's unstructured, you don't have a content repository that's structured, if your data is siloed into, for us, things like learning management systems, right? And it's just sitting in all these places in totally different formats, usually locked behind some kind of proprietary system, you're not going to be able to do anything with AI there. It'll just make some stuff up because it's not going to have any access to those things. And even if you gave it access, it's still not structured in a way that's logical. Corrine said you have to spend some time thinking through a data strategy to make sure that you're providing appropriate context to make sure that all that works. Hey, Josh. Josh just joined us. Josh had a fancy keynote, so Josh had to join us a little bit late.
Sorry.
Welcome to the party.
Yeah.
We just got done talking, Josh, about examples of why AI automation might fail and why it failed. And we talked about just lack of data, lack of structured data, things not documented, systems, AI systems not even having access to it in any meaningful way. So that's where we're jumping off today. Let's jump into another question. We talked about data. What do we actually mean by structured data? When we're talking about learning ecosystems, what does structured data even mean?
I know for myself, and actually I can't even believe I'm going back to it, is like single source publishing. Like way back in the day, anything that's XML based and the advantages to that. I think having a source of truth that can be updated dynamically and then propagated out in whatever fashion possible, whatever performance or learning experience, that affords an organization a lot of flexibility. So many of them don't have it. And for the ones that do, I don't think they're using it properly. So I think there's a lot of education that needs to be done around having these sources of truth and having structured data. And there's a lot of work to be done.
Why don't you explain for those playing along on the home game what you mean by having this source and using XML? Talk to us about what that
Yeah.
is for folks who have never even heard of that. Maybe they're just using
Yeah.
authoring tools.
There are vendors that are out there that provide systems that allow you to take your source of truth and put it into XML, which is a markup language that gives us additional meaning around that content. And for an AI system, that affords us a lot because when a large language model actually takes that information and it has that additional context around the information, the way that you can go in and identify patterns within that information and then transform it into specific learning and performance experiences can be really impactful. It all goes upstream. Like you have to have your house in order when it comes to that data. Because even if you go ahead and you set up a taxonomy and that taxonomy is incorrect, then downstream you're going to get substandard outputs. And so you really have to upskill and reskill yourself around data so that you understand when you set these systems up that you're doing it properly.
I love that you said downstream. And I want to just mention something about that and then throw this out to the rest of the group. One of the things that I posted on LinkedIn yesterday when I was talking about this session being today was that when you're thinking about AI strategy, you really have to rewind and start with your business. You have to think about your business strategy for what are you trying to do? And then you have to get your data in order, right? Think about your data strategy. What data and structures do I need to support that? And then and only then can you start getting into AI stuff. So, because that's downstream, all of that other strategy has to be in place and in order before you can start thinking about how can AI help us do this or make this better or automate a process or save us time or whatever that might look like. Do you all agree or disagree and why?
I think 100%. If you look back to, I pull in technical writing background a little bit of using information architecture to go kind of add on to what Josh was saying of tagging content with the right keywords, with the right context that they should have. If we look at it from the downstream of an XAPI perspective, having a schema that data is all in the same format and is readable, like that's going to take everything that you're doing and give the large language model something that it can constantly go back to and understand. But if you don't have that data strategy or that information architecture, but it's kind of garbage in, garbage out. It's, again, back to your last question, the AI is not going to fix it. It's just going to take whatever is right in front of it and it's going to pump it back out to you in whatever that format looks like.
You hear a lot of this on people who are criticizing AI implementations, and they'll say, you think about where it fails. And when your data is all fragmented, or it's not good quality, or it's inaccessible, or it's not trusted, then it's garbage in, garbage out. It just ends up falling apart. When you have a strong data strategy, then that is going to help us make sure that what data is most important for our business. How's it captured? How's it structured? What's the governance? How's it accessed? How are we going to tap into it? Who owns the data? How do we make sure that it's quality data? How do we make sure that we're adhering to whatever compliance that we need to? And so things like that is where if you don't have that in place, it starts to fall apart. Kareen, what do you think?
I'm going to do a contextual plug for the work that Josh and I are actually doing on Taylor Rewire, because we're talking to organizations a lot about 2025 was really a year where a lot of organizations were like, let's figure out what AI can do. And there was a lot of experimentation and it was unstructured. And most organizations were talking about hand wavily AI skills and thinking about how they integrate AI into their organizations. And we started to see this emphasis on let's just automate things. And this belief that AI was going to be the lead for the transformation. And what I think every organization is now 2026 realizing is that AI isn't the lead into transformation, that it is people and it is data. And in order to be able to enable people to do the work alongside AI, you need to understand how work is changing, which is why we're focusing on what we do at Talent Rewire. The other element is, do you have the data structures you need for AI to pull from to be able to do its job effectively? And I think those two components are actually why AI initiatives fail, not because the AI itself is necessarily faulty, but to your point, Sarah, like organizations aren't ready and don't have the business strategy thinking around what are we trying to accomplish? What does that mean for how our organization needs to operate? And then from my perspective, how do we enable the people and how do we get our data structures in place so that we can support the transformation as it needs to happen?
Exactly. And just another little plug, Kareen and I are putting together a white paper that'll be available soon to talk about this process, right? With Talent Rewire, going through and figuring out what's your business strategy. What is it that you're trying to do? And do you have all your skills stuff, all of what the human factor pieces that need to be in place And then you can come talk to us about your data strategy and implementing that into your ecosystem and moving forward from a systems perspective. So that's coming soon. But I wanted to just reinforce this concept of the fact that AI is probabilistic, right? So it is basically using data to determine what it should do, right? And so if your systems are deterministic, then we're going to be in a situation where if your data is not structured very intentionally, then you're going to be building automation on ambiguity. You're going to be building automation on just made up stuff. That's why when you go in and you just open up your favorite large language model and ask it questions, it will very confidently give you an answer based on whatever it randomly comes up with. It's word salad. It's just calculating what it thinks that you want it to hear. So if you want better results, then you have to feed it good data and train it and make sure that it knows what it is that you're trying to work with here. I wanted to get into talking about this scalability because one of the things that makes AI magic tricks very enticing is that I can stand up in front of a conference and be like, look at this. I can make you a chatbot that'll tell you how great you are. That's really rad. And it's a nice magic trick. And yes, it can talk to me and make me think it's like something that's smart. But I'd like to kind of redirect to what is it that leaders should be thinking about when we're talking about AI at scale? Along the lines of what governance questions should leaders be asking before they deploy these AI automations? What are some of the things that leaders should be thinking about? Once they see the magic trick, okay, now what? Let's take a critical thinking approach to this. What do you think leaders should be asking about?
It goes back to the human big time, especially around discernment. When I take a look at the exponential curve of capability and what's happening out there in the marketplace, when these capabilities come back into the firewall, content creation is going to crash down to zero, meaning that the ability for us as performance practitioners to go ahead and put out there on the front lines or to our associates performance and learning experiences at scale, that's going to be a reality. But my gosh, we're supporting humans. And if we put multiple chatbots out there or they get a performance hit every moment, are we truly serving them? And I think we got to be careful. And I think for leaders, they need to balance these capabilities and making sure that we're putting signal out on the front lines and it's not noise. Because Sarah, to your point, it's whiz bang and it could serve a purpose, but are we truly solving a problem? And they need to go back to the problem because they're going to get enamored by all these opportunities to tell leadership, oh, look how we're supporting the front lines with all these great personalized hyper whatever experiences. But is it too much? And it's not focused. It's like scattershot. It's like a shotgun approach to performance. And I think they're going to have to pull back once these capabilities come in-house and really be diligent about the solutions they're putting out there.
Go.
I was just going to say, I have two very specific things that I think governance-wise organizations haven't been talking about enough. The first one is, where are decisions being made in the organization as you implement AI? Are you allowing AI to make decisions or are you still centering the actual decision making with people? And I think when you see the AI magic tricks, you start to believe or assume that AI can make intelligent decisions accurately. And there's this kind of intrinsic belief we have when we see somebody who's very capable at something, even a person. We're like, oh, they must be good at this other stuff. And that's not always true. And that's also true with AI, right? So I like to joke that working with AI is like working with a toddler. Sometimes it does something so magical and you're like, oh my God, you're so smart. And then other times you're like, oh my God, you're crazy. What are you doing? Reining it in. And I think that's that piece of who's making decisions and who's actually moving things forward, whether that is a person or AI, needs to be decided and really thoughtfully planned for how things are going to work. The other one is I heard a term a week or two ago, which may be very common for other folks, but it was the first time I heard it, which is data drift. And that they're starting to recognize that as even agentic AI, as it continues to operate, that data starts to skew. And so the hallucinations that were really obvious with LLMs are also starting to pop up in some of the agentic models. and that the oversight of the output of even agents needs to be monitored, and there needs to be, back to Josh's word of the day, discernment. There needs to be someone who's actually saying, does this make sense? Is this accurate? How are we cross-checking the output of AI? Even the best trained AI can be wrong. And so just like even the best experts and people can be wrong. So how do we create checks and balances in our organization? So if I was implementing AI, these are some of the things I would look at, but that's assuming that I already have good data, right? Like getting back to the kind of word of the day, if you don't have the good data infrastructure to populate it, those two governance pieces are almost meaningless because you're not starting from a good, informed, consistent place.
Now, I want to ask a clarifying question here because there are differences between AI, big umbrella, and generative AI. So, when we talk about these hallucinations, one of the things to consider is, are we talking about things like machine learning? Are we talking about things that where we're using generative AI or large language models to make meaning of things? And I don't know, Josh, if you want to tackle this at all. We don't have a ton of time, but
Yep. Yeah, and just a couple things like machine learning, or when deep learning first came out, that was locked in. Like you had very specific usage. The data sets were extremely small, like blowing things off a factory line based on vision technology, right? That's been around for a long time. And even as we move forward, the engineers, the orchestrators of these in corporations, they understand the limitations. And so they are trying to merge deterministic based information and systems in with LLMs. Another pattern I'm seeing are small language models that are hyper focused in on a domain of knowledge that even if it hallucinates, at least it's within range. And we are in a really odd time because we want to move forward and be productive with these tools, but there's still so much risk that needs to be assessed as we go forward. I do believe that as we move forward, that we're going to see that mitigated over time. But man, we got to watch what we're doing with this tech.
I love that. And I think this leads us to one thing I wanted to say before I move on to this last question is that when we talk about this concept of having a dependable AI driven workflow, you really have to think about focus, right? What data are you feeding it? What automation? What's triggering what? And that's where I think AI and XAPI play really well together. Last year at the DevLearn conference, Mel Milloway did a session on making a robot dance using XAPI data. And the reason she was able to do that is because she had that AI automation sitting and listening for one very specific data point. Did the person click this button, which was all labeled? Once that data flowed in, once that button got clicked in this e-learning course, then I could trigger that automation and say, okay, the data came through. Now make this robot dance or post this message in Slack or whatever, right? If you have very specific data triggers, then you can make those automations work really well. And that's one of the benefits of using data structures like XAPI. And one of the areas where XCL is focused as a tool is being able to make sure that your data is consistent and structured and meaningful, and that you're getting more than Sarah passed a course. Now, that is a meaningful piece of data that you could do something with and you could trigger something to happen with. But there are other things that people might be doing from a performance support perspective and training perspective that are important. And so thinking about what is somebody doing and what do we need to know about that? And is there something else that we need to have happen if they do a thing? And that's one of the things that can help us in the training world when it comes to AI automations. And I talked to Mel Milloway this morning. I'm going to try to get that resource and I'll see if it's okay with her to share out how she set that up. One last question for y'all. If you could change one question leaders are asking about AI right now, what would it be? The questions that they ask. And I'll tell you what mine is. I would tell leaders, stop asking what AI tool you should buy and start asking, is our data structured enough to support automation? That's my wish list. What would you all say? What is the question? If you could tell leaders what's one thing they should be asking, what would it be?
How do we best support AI from a data perspective? Yeah, I think, again, going back to what you've all said and what we've been talking about here is, again, what can AI do for me? But it's that I want to click the button and have it magically change everything and make it perfect. And it's not there.
I'll jump in. How is AI impacting the mental state of my associates using that data?
Oh my goodness. Oh, it's so near and dear to my heart, Josh. You just made my heart feel good. Thank you. As how is this affecting people?
Yep.
That is a shocking statement today, isn't it? Go ahead, Kareen. What do you think?
I would want them to ask what areas of my organization aren't ready for AI.
Ooh, that's a good one. Sean and I are actually working on a project right now with an organization that does manufacturing in the produce industry. And these people don't even have an internet connection. They're not talking to chatbots, folks. They're on a farm. There are people that are driving trucks and working in restaurants. These people are not talking to your chatbots. I'm sorry. They're going to need a different kind of training. And it ain't going to come from an AI chatbot robot thing. Now, like, not right now, unless, the kung fu robots that are over in China right now come out and start doing some stuff for us. I'm sorry. I just saw a video of that this morning. Rob, what would you want people to ask in leadership?
I think the first thing I would ask leadership is, what are your clear outcomes from usage of AI? What is the intended goal? There's a lot of magic tricks out there, I find. And I find when it gets up the line, it's like, hey, let's start using it because magic will happen for us. And I think it needs to be clear what the expectation is. And that's the context that actually AI requires to operate properly. I find that's missing in a lot of cases.
Such great points. Okay. So I want to wrap this up for today's session to say that there are some new features in XCL that will support this. Now, XCL is built on the XAPI data standard, which means that no matter what type of content you're putting into it, whether it's e-learning, videos, PDFs, we're converting that or translating the data that comes out of those different types of content into a standardized contextual consistent format using XAPI. The other thing that it's important for you to know is in the last release that just came out in the last week, you now have the ability when you're creating your link to add keywords and descriptions. And I know that doesn't sound fancy, but if you want to have AI know what is in a link, then you need to have that information. And what I did yesterday was I created a little chatbot, and I will post it out in the comments in LinkedIn and also on the YouTube channel. So that way you can play with this chatbot. But I put it together a little chatbot with all of our white papers, which happen to live in XCL. And it will let you, when you talk to it, it will ask you some questions. And based on your answers, it will recommend one of our build capable white papers to you that might be relevant to your needs. So I was only able to do that because all of the XCL white paper links that we had that context. It has keywords, it has a description, it has the link and the name and so forth. So that way, when I fed it into the chatbot, I could say, here's how I want you to work. And it has that context so that it can feed it in. And then whenever you do access that link, I also get all the data of your interaction based on how you interact with that link. This is very powerful for AI, and there are lots of things coming soon. So if you are an XCL user, make sure that you're using those keywords and descriptions as you're building your links. So that way you can take advantage of some of the cool benefits that are going to be coming as we continue to build out our roadmap this year. All right. We will post this on our YouTube channel so that way you have accurate captions and a transcript after today's session. And this also lives out on LinkedIn. We'll add some resources there as well. Stay tuned next month at the end of the month. So last Thursday of March, we will be inviting our friends at Vengage. So Eugene Wu will be on with us. And we're going to talk about how to create accessible PDFs and then deliver and track them with XCL and what kind of data you get out of that. So that whole workflow, we'll be partnering with Vengage to talk about that next month and have some guests on for that as well. So thank you all for joining us today, and we'll see you next time.